Well, last night, the Rangers celebrated their 25th anniversary of their last Stanley Cup. The story of the 1994 team has certainly been told time and time again. But another season is the focus of a new book. It's called Before '94, the story of the 1978-79 New York Rangers. And we are joined by co-author Mark Rosenman in studio once again for the fourth time. Good seeing you again, buddy.
It was great seeing you, Steve.
Happy to have you here, and congratulations on your new book. And it's about a team that you and Howie Carpenter put this story together of the 1978 team, a team that lost the Stanley Cup final, but it seems like there's so much more to their story that year.
Is so much more. And, you know, Howie and I sit side by side up at the press box at Madison Square Garden. We talk, you know, what happened if that 94 Cup team never won? You know, where does that put that 78-79 team in retrospect? Because we're talking, if that 94 team doesn't win, there's no way Adam Graves, you know, jersey's up in the rafters. Richter probably yes. Messier maybe not, because he would have come here and failed. We talked about that 78-79 team and everything that came together, the hiring of Fred Shero from the hated Flyers, then signing 2 WHA stars in Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nielsen, then the fact that, you know, Freddie Shero, you know, Phil Esposito was the captain. He basically talked Phil out of giving up the captaincy, and he turns it over to the youngest captain ever in Ranger history, in Dave Maloney. So we knew there was a lot there, and we figured, let's see what we can do with this.
I just think what's so interesting about it now is that maybe this is a story that wasn't really talked about much back in 78, 79, but there was a story about one of the players before one of the finals games was actually involved in a bank robbery.
Semifinal, Game 3, Rangers-Islanders. Game was at Madison Square Garden. Pat Hickey, who was a great storyteller. I mean, Pat gave me story after story, but in doing the research, I came across, it was a small little article about Game 3, and in the corner, it talked about, you know, Pat Hickey, eyewitness to bank robbery. So we talked about it, and he said, yeah, you know, after the morning skate, he went across the street to the bank and walked into an armed robbery. And he said at first he thought,
he wasn't involved in it, he was a victim of it. Okay, just making sure.
Right, exactly. And he said that, I'm going to die here. He actually was scared, and then there was he said, a little old lady in front of him, and he started comforting her, and finally they left, and he walked out. You know, the police had come, he walked out, he went back to the garden and played in the game, and he said it was the most peaceful game he ever had. He wasn't thinking about anything. He was just happy to be at Madison Square Garden. Yeah. And he said the bank robbers were caught a couple of blocks away, but yeah, he said it was the most calm he ever felt on the ice.
Well, you come face to face with mortality, I would imagine a game probably doesn't, I guess, pales in comparison there. That 78 team was special to you because that's where you found your love for this team, but also special maybe because it triggered this rivalry between the Rangers and the Islanders, one that blossomed over the following 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. Especially for me, I grew up on Long Island being a Ranger fan, and the first taste of playoff hockey, Islanders-Rangers, did not end well for the Rangers. It was the overtime goal where J.P. Parisi scored and eliminated, at that point, the better Rangers. And this was our payback because the Islanders were expected to win. They were expected to win the Cup. They were the best team in hockey, with the exception of the Canadiens. And for the Rangers to beat them, that was our Stanley Cup back in the day. So it was the root of a lot of people of Howie and my age, the root of our Ranger fandom for sure.
And you look at the guys that were wearing the sweater back then, Dave Maloney, Ron Duguay, Phil Esposito, legends in the franchise, and maybe more importantly, they were just as impactful in the world of hockey after that.
Yeah. Again, in looking back, so much was made of the pedigree of the 1969 Knicks and what they went on to.
Right.
Obviously, no Ranger went on to be a senator, but you take a look at Phil Esposito, instrumental in bringing hockey to Tampa Bay. You look at the broadcasting career that Dave Maloney has put together. Don Maloney, his brother, has been a GM with multiple franchises. Nick Fotiu is responsible for putting about 43 players into the NHL. So there is a collective wealth of hockey knowledge there that transcended their playing careers.
Yeah. One of the other guys, too, John Davidson, was the netminder, and he apparently stood on his head from what you have written in this book, how incredible he was in that game, or in that series, I should say, and really that entire season. But he came that close to a Stanley Cup final, and he was never able to get the cup, and has always mentioned how much he lamented that. And I feel like it sounds like all of those guys felt like they were just so close to grasping that ring and were unable to capture it?
To a man. That was a sentiment. We basically spoke to every single member of that team that played more than 5 games, and we've spoken to 3 players that played in only 2 games, with the exception of Pierre Plante. Pierre Plante was the only person I could not track down to speak to, but to a man, they regretted not winning that cup more than anything. Don Maloney, to this day, he says he's still chasing that cup, whether it be as a GM, an assistant GM, a scout. He's still chasing that cup. Dave Farris was able to do it as an assistant coach, but as he was an assistant coach, he basically had wristbands made up for every single player that just had the number 1 on it, and he told them that means this could be your only one shot at a cup. Don't blow it. Do everything you can to win the cup, because you may never get another chance, as he never did as a player.
Okay, do you see any parallels maybe with that team, at least with JD, and where Henrik Lundqvist finds himself right now? How close he came?
Yeah, I think looking back at his career, as great as Henrik is, he's going to look back like JD, because he's not going anywhere. The team is in a midst of a rebuild. He will probably be a mentor for the kid from Russia who's having a phenomenal season over there. He's 21-3 right now, 76-9 lifetime. Right now his goals against is 1.20. He's coming in the next year or 2. Their contracts will overlap. He'll be his mentor. He'll teach him how to be a professional. But by the time they're good enough again to contend for a cup, Henrik will be retired.
See, this is why your perspective is so refreshing, because you're not only a Rangers historian, you also cover the team right now, a team that is clearly in the middle of a rebuild. Yeah. And as you said, Henrik Lundqvist has refused to waive his no-trade clause. How do you read that situation right now?
Henrik is a competitor. He wants to be part of the rebuild. He saw how good it could be here when they made it to the Cup final, and they had some really good teams. I think he has a sense that he owes it to the franchise, and he loves it here. He does, and he's such a competitor. Listen, this team has no right to be close to 500 in the way they're playing, and yet because of Henrik, that's where they find themselves.
Okay, so do you see him as one of those guys chasing a cup that will flip to a contender at some point before his career is over, or is he going to be the ultimate rarity in sports, a superstar that stays with one team from beginning to end?
I think it's a fine line, because I think Henrik wants to stay here, but because of the salary cap in the NHL, a team that's on the cusp of winning a Stanley Cup probably does not have the cap room to accommodate Henrik. And if they're on the cusp of winning a cup, that means they're pretty set in goaltending. And you take a look at the last couple of cups, it's not, you don't need that superstar goalie. It's everything in front of that goalie that kind of wins you the cup.
Okay, well, let's talk about how close they are to that, because last year was clearly a fire sale. This year is most likely going to be another fire sale. How close before their window at a possible championship opens again?
It all depends on what they get back in return. If they trade Kevin Hayes, that's a big question mark. Zuccarello most likely is going to be traded. Depends on what he brings back. They have a lot of young, really good talent on the defensive end. Panarin's going to be a free agent. That's the guy I think they need to target. But even with him, they still need to develop a couple of more explosive wings. Zibanejad's coming into his own. Kreider is a force. You know, again, probably 3 to 4 years, until the kid from Russia gets here.
And this is from someone who covers the team
and wants to say next year, but
yeah, right. Yeah. But you have to be realistic, and also a Rangers historian as well. You can get his new book. It is called Before '94: The Story of the '78-'79 Rangers. Co-author Mark Rosenman. Good seeing you again, man.
Awesome. Always great to be here.
Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
Right, stick around. We're back after this.